Welcome to Olivia's Blooms. If you are new to my channel, I'm gardening in Charlottesville, Virginia, Zone 7B. I'm a home gardener who loves growing my own cut flowers and home decor with a focus on sustainable, regenerative, and eco-friendly practices. But most importantly, I'm here to support, share with, and learn from other gardeners, so I hope you will join me in growing this amazing gardening community. Hey guys, welcome back to Olivia's Blooms. We are down in my basement grow room because I'm going to be talking about my favorite seed starting method, soil blocking. I'm going to talk to you about why I prefer soil blocking over other seed starting methods. I'm going to share the materials and equipment that I think are must-haves if you want to do soil blocking, and material and equipment that is really nice to have if you want to do soil blocking. I grow most of my flowers and vegetables from seed, and my preferred method to start seed is soil blocking. I use soil blocking for almost everything I start, with the exception of a few very finicky flowers or plants that don't do well in a soil block, but if I can have success soil blocking something, that's what I do. I will also caveat this by saying I am not an expert in soil blocking. There are some great resources out there if you're really interested in it. I highly recommend Elliot Coleman, Lisa Mason Ziegler, and Bree from Blossom and Branch Farm. All have really great soil blocking videos. But I wanted to share my experience with soil blocking on a home gardener scale, not a flower farm or expert level scale, with the hopes of it showing you and inspiring you to try it, because you do not need to be an expert flower farmer or gardener to have success with soil blocking, and I really enjoy it. Okay, so why do I prefer soil blocking over other seed starting methods? The first reason, and the reason that really got me interested in trying it, was that it is, generally speaking, a more eco-friendly way of starting seeds. That is because typically you use less plastic. Now, the amount less plastic you use depends on all of the materials that you use when you are soil blocking, but you are going to be able to avoid using those plastic seed trays that are usually very flimsy type of plastic. They rip and you end up having to throw them out and replace them. But I will say this is a judgment-free zone. I have absolutely used seed starting trays. I have to use plastic sometimes in my gardening. This is just meant to show you, if you want to move in a more eco-friendly way, this is a great method for starting seeds. A second major reason why I like soil blocking is that it grows healthier transplants, and I have definitely found that to be true having used both methods. A couple of the reasons why that is a soil block gets more air circulation around the soil reservoir because it's not covered by plastic on most sides. Also, what's nice is that soil blocking, the roots get air pruned, and what that means is, as a plant grows, its roots grow down and out. Now when those roots hit the air, they stop growing, which is okay. As soon as you plant them and they hit the soil again, they'll continue to grow out and establish a nice, wide, healthy root system. If you grow it in another material, especially like plastic, when the roots hit that material, they can start to circle, and you might have experienced this if you've ever bought or grown a root-bound plant. And once the roots start to circle, it can be a little bit harder to get them growing in a healthy direction again. I've also experienced that transplants, so that means from a seed to a plant that you transplant out, seeds typically grow faster by 1 or 2 weeks. I don't know why that is, don't ask me, but I've noticed that, and that's also a nice benefit. The final benefit to soil blocking is that it can be space saving depending on the size of soil block that you use. I use the small one a lot, and especially for a home gardener, if you don't want to invest in a huge setup, you can grow a lot of different things in small soil blocks without having to invest in a huge footprint. Also, I will add that soil blocks are so easy to plant. You just dig a hole and plop it in, and it's really that simple. Okay, let's get into what I think are the must-have materials for soil blocking. Some of these are specific to soil blocking, but some of these are specific to just seed starting in general. The must-haves for soil blocking are seeds, light, the right type of soil, a tray, heat, a soil blocker, a way to trap humidity for germination, and what I think is the most important thing is patience. And what I mean by patience is not just in terms of having to wait for the plant to grow, but it takes a few years to really hone your processes for soil blocking based on your specific growing conditions, your own tendencies, and your own schedule. And I think that probably goes for any seed starting method, but I still want to encourage you to try it because even if your first year is not perfect, you can still have success. In my first year of growing in soil blocks, I had not great germination in all of the blocks. I was growing algae and mold. I had a really bad fungus gnat problem. And when I grew on some of the plants, some of them attracted some aphids, but I still grew so many flowers. I loved that year. I had so much fun. And I think kind of honing the process and getting better and better is also part of the fun. So let me talk a little bit more about each of these things. Now, you need seeds, and I know that seems like duh, of course, but it's important to have, especially when you're just starting out and you want to make sure you have success, the right type of seeds. The right type of seeds are seeds that grow into plants that don't mind being transplanted. And there are a few plants that do not like to be transplanted, but if you look on your seed packet and it says that either the preferred or recommended method is transplanting, or even if the preferred method of seeding is direct sowing, but it says you can also transplant, then you should be able to grow seeds in soil blocks. And some of my favorite seed companies are Johnny's Seeds, tons and tons of information, the Gardener's Workshop Farm, Baker Creek, a really eco-conscious company with free shipping on all their seeds. And I've also tried and loved Redemption Seeds. Just a few ideas. The next thing that you need to grow any plant, including starting from seed, is light. Now, I won't say that you have to buy grow lights for soil blocking. There have been people that have had success starting on their windowsill, but you can buy really inexpensive grow lights, essentially shop lights, and I'll go a little bit more into detail about the ones that I use. And I like it better because you can control the situation a little bit better and you can guarantee that you're gonna have success that way. Okay, I was editing this video. It's now a few days later and I've realized I forgot to talk about heat. That's why you'll notice the wardrobe change. But heat is also important. Similarly to humidity, heat not only guarantees that you'll have a good germination rate, but it also helps speed up the germination process so that those plants can get up and growing and start drinking the water that's in the soil so that water's not sitting there and growing other things. You can probably get away with germinating some things without heat, like especially cool season hardy annuals, but some things like warm season hardy annuals are going to require that heat. You can buy a very inexpensive heat mat, and I'll show you mine. I know some gardeners who will use their ovens or the top of their ovens when they're cooking, but I think having a consistent source of heat is probably worth it. There are a lot of different soil blocker types and sizes out there. These are the two that I recommend. This makes very small, I believe they're 1/4 inch, but don't quote me on it, blocks. And look, you can fit 20 in this small square. And this makes 5 larger size blocks. I like having both because you might want to use bigger or smaller blocks depending on the space you have and what you're growing and what your growing conditions are. But you don't need both. And there are other sizes out there that are metal and plastic, but you need something that's going to compact that soil into a block. Now, a way to trap humidity for germination, again, you can probably get away with germinating some things without trapping humidity, but I think, again, it helps speed up the germination time A lot of things aren't going to germinate well if they don't have that. If you really want a good germination rate, you're going to want a way to trap it, but there's a lot of different things you can use. And then patience, we already went over. I don't need to go over that again. All right, now here's my list of nice to haves. I think these either make the process a lot easier or they help ensure that you're gonna have more success and more productive soil blocking experience. So I'm gonna go through these and put them up again, and we'll go through them one by one. The nice to haves for me for soil blocking are a watering can, a timer, a shelf or rack to hang your grow lights from, a fan, a seed tray and some type of seeder, a flat bottom container for mixing your soil, fly traps, liquid fertilizer, a garden marker, vermiculite, a spray bottle, and cinnamon. Okay, so why are these nice to have? First, a watering can. So you can water a tray of soil blocks from the faucet if you're very careful and you put it really low, but it's important not to splash water on top of your soil blocks. They can disintegrate. I've had it happen a few times when I got too aggressive with my watering. And what a watering can does, especially if it's got this long spout, is you can control the water both where it goes, so not on top of the soil blocks, and also the speed. And these are inexpensive, and the size you'll need depends on how many you're going to grow and how often you're going to need to water them. A timer is really nice to have because generally speaking, you want to give your seeds about 16 to 18 hours of light a day. Now you could time it yourself, maybe set an alarm on your phone and turn the lights on and off when you want them to be on or off. But a timer allows you to just program the hours you want and forget about it. And my timer was super inexpensive. I want to say $8 or $9, and I'll show you when I give you a little tour. But to me, it was worth that investment to make sure I didn't forget one day, which I knew I personally would, and make sure they're getting the exact right amount of light each day. A shelf or a rack is really great to be able to hang your grow lights from. And you can get them anywhere from a small shelf unit to huge units, depending again on how many lights you have and how much seeds you want to grow. And I'll show you mine. I have 2 large baker racks that I use, but you definitely don't need that size of a rack for your grow lights. It's also nice to have a fan. Now you can use a small fan. It just needs to circulate the air, and the idea behind the fan is it helps circulate that air so that you're not growing too much mold and algae, which was especially a problem for me, but it also mimics outdoor conditions because the wind that blows outside helps harden off your seedlings, which means it helps them grow stronger stems so that when you plant them outside, if there is wind, they don't bend and break and suffer. A couple other accessories that I waited too long to buy and was so happy after I did was just a couple trays for your seeds. And the reason for these is that some seeds, a lot of seeds, especially flower seeds, are very tiny and hard to see. Take snapdragon seeds, for example. It's like dust. And these lower the static electricity so that they're easier to pick up, but also make it easier to see and collect them in one location and make it easier to pour back whatever you don't use. I also would recommend a way to pick up the seeds other than your fingers. You can certainly do it that way, but a simple toothpick is actually my preferred method and makes it so much easier. And this is used in what's known as the lick and stick method. I just use a tray of water, but essentially you moisten the tip of the toothpick and you pick up one seed at a time and you place them in the block. Really makes the process a lot easier. You could also use something like this. This is a seeder that I got as a gift. It's not my preferred method, but a lot of people like this as well. Another nice to have, I mentioned a flat bottom tray, and the reason for that is when you are making your soil blocks, you want to be able to press down on them and ensure that every one of these blocks is getting soil in it. It really helps make good compacted soil blocks. You could certainly use use your hands to pack soil in there, but that's going to take a long time. And if you use a bowl, the sides are not flat enough to get every one of these blocks filled. Now, you don't need a large container. This size actually is what I use for the most part, and it holds a lot of soil, and you can make a lot of soil blocks out of this container. And I grow a lot of flowers for a home gardener. But you can use other things you have around the house, like a tub, a plastic tub that you might use to store clothes in, or if you have a garden trug, like this. This works well too. You can get a nice flat surface on these. Another nice to have are fly traps. These are the ones I use. They were really inexpensive. They come in all different shapes, but they capture and kill fungus gnats. Very important for me, especially. I have a lot of fungus gnats. I really don't know any gardener who started seeds who hasn't had to deal with fungus gnats, and you don't want too many fungus gnats because they can exacerbate any mold or fungus that are growing on your soil blocks. So what I do is I buy a pack of these, and right from the start I put them up. So if I'm starting a seed tray right here, I'll just stick this right on the corner. And I find that it helps a lot. If you do it from the beginning, it prevents the problem from getting really bad. Now, if the problem gets really, really bad, there are other things you can use, but a preventive measure like this is really inexpensive and I think makes a big difference if you use it right away. The next nice to have is a liquid fertilizer to feed your seedlings. They don't need a lot, but it can help them, once they're up and growing, start to grow into transplants quicker. I like to use Neptune's Fertilizer Harvest, but there's a ton of great liquid fertilizers out there. And so you don't have to, but I think it helps and makes a difference. And again, not very expensive. Another nice to have is a garden marker. I always label my soil blocks with what I've started and the date. That helps because even if you're a pretty savvy gardener and you can tell what type of plants are what based on how the seedling looks. For example, I can tell the difference between a straw flower or a snapdragon or rudbeckia. But when you grow several different varieties, that can be really hard to tell the difference. I also like having the date because you can up your game and you can take notes about when you started stuff and then figure out, do I need to use less time next year? Do I need to leave more time? And a garden marker really does make a difference in terms of lasting. I've used a Sharpie before and it wore off so badly that why did I even mark it in the first place? I couldn't tell what it said. The garden marker too will come in handy as you label plants outside. So it's dual use. Another nice to have, vermiculite. What is vermiculite? It's a soil amendment that a lot of gardeners use to help with soil compaction. Let me show you what it looks like. It's sort of a grainy material. And what this does is you sprinkle it on the surface of your soil blocks. A lot of people use this in all types of seed starting methods. And it either holds moisture if you deal with a lot of dryness to help those seeds germinate. It also can prevent too much moisture, which is more my problem, which can help mitigate mold and algae growth on your soil blocks. It's important to get the fine vermiculite. It does come in a coarser grain than this. You want the fine grain because your seeds still need to get some air and moisture and light. And so you also don't want to lay it on too thickly. I'll skip ahead and add that another nice amendment you can add is cinnamon. Some people say it helps prevent algae growth. I don't know if that's true or not, but it smells nice, so why not? The last nice to have is a spray bottle. This again comes in handy when you are spraying your soil blocks, especially as they are in the germination phase. You want to make sure those seeds stay moist until they are up and going. So a spray bottle comes in handy for that. I have a small one, you could use a large one, whatever you have on hand again. All right, now that we've gone over the supplies, I want to give you just a little bit more information about what I personally use based on some experiences that I've had and things that I've learned. The most important thing that was a game changer for me is the type of tray I used. And I'll show you, this is the tray that I prefer to use now. It's hard to find, but this is a fiberglass tray. It is 9 by 6, and I like it both for the material and the size and the shape of it. I'll talk about the shape first. So this has shallow sides, and it allows the water, when I pour water in, to stay in the tray, but it's not so high that it prevents air circulation. And I mentioned I have moisture issues in my basement, and so that air circulation is especially important for me. I also like the fiberglass material because it's reusable. Not necessarily the most eco-friendly material, but I can use it and it'll last a really long time. And it's also food safe, and I've been trying to reduce to the extent possible the amount of plastics in my soil and in my food, and so this material is rated for food safety. It's because this is actually a tray they use in the food service, I believe the bakery industry. I like the size of this too because this is perfect for 2 of the 20-inch soil blocks. Let me show you. So I can fit 2 of these on here, and there's a lot of room for me to pour the water without getting on top of the soil blocks. The 9 by 6 also holds about 4 rows of the 5 size blocker. So either size you want to do, this tray is a really good option. You might wonder, well, why would a smaller tray be better? Just use a bigger tray and you can put a lot of different soil blocks on it. This is actually really important, especially for a home gardener, to have several small trays versus large trays. And the reason is you want to the extent possible, grow the exact same plants all together on one tray and not grow different types of plants. And that is because soil blocks are not very transportable. That is one of the cons. So what you don't want to have happen is this soil block is up and going and ready to go under lights. The seeds have germinated. And this one needs another week on the heat mat and under a dome to get up and going, because then you're out of luck. One of those is going to have to suffer. So if you're not going to be starting a lot of the same thing, it's good to have a lot of small trays. But you can get these in bigger sizes. The final thing I like about these trays are they are dishwasher safe. I washed a lot of my trays for a long time by hand, and I personally am not a very detail-oriented cleaner. If you're meticulous about cleaning, you probably can wash trays with just soap and water and be fine, but I wasn't really sanitizing mine to the extent they needed, and I found that when I started using the dishwasher and really thoroughly cleaning everything, it really helped reduce that mold and algae that I was growing. But you do not need to use these trays. I will show you some other options that work fine. This is just a food takeout container, and yes, it's plastic, but to me, if you're trying to reuse plastic that you already have, that's an eco-conscious way of starting seeds. This is nice because it comes with its own humidity dome. The downside of these is that the sides are really high, so I was not getting enough air circulation on my soil blocks, but a lot of gardeners love using these, so try them out and see if they work for your particular seed starting setup. And they're free. I will say I like saving the lids though, because when I start soil blocks on here, this actually serves as a perfect little humidity dome. It still allows some air circulation, but traps the moisture right around the seeds and fits perfectly over 2 blocks. So I save these and use them as a way to trap humidity. You can also use the standard 10 by 20 trays. My issue with these is they work fine for the large size soil blocks, but for small soil blocks, anything with ridges, and almost all of the 10 by 20s have some sort of ridge, The little soil blocks will fall in between, and it makes it really hard to water them and monitor them, and some of them fell apart. So I don't use this for small soil blocks, but you can again use it for the large ones. It does have higher sides though. Another great tray you can use for seed starting is the ones that come with meat products, and I'm talking about those small styrofoam trays. If you buy chicken breast or any type of meat, they usually come in those types of trays, and they're styrofoam, so if you can find a way to reuse that styrofoam, that's great. They have shallow sides. Lisa Mason Ziegler at the Gardener's Workshop, I believe, sells those as well if you want to use those. And a final option are cafeteria trays. They're really big, but they have those nice shallow sides, and you might be able to get them either inexpensively or for free from the local schools. So a lot of gardeners use those. Eliot Coleman uses wood trays, and I wish I had the ability to make those myself. Those to me are the ultimate eco-friendly, sustainable type of seed starting tray. So I hope to be able to put one of those together one day. I can't find anywhere you can purchase them on the internet. I also want to talk real quickly about trapping humidity. I mentioned that I saved these lids. I think these work well. You can also purchase plastic domes. These are a couple that came with some other seed starting trays I have, and these work really well. You don't have to buy a tray to buy the plastic dome. You can buy it separately. Plastic works really well. Some people use saran wrap, but you have to be careful because if it touches the seed or the seedling, you can accidentally pull it up. So you want to make sure that saran wrap is not laying right on top of the seed. Using plastic is controversial in terms of folks like Eliot Coleman and Lisa Mason Ziegler find that this adds more harm than good, and it creates too much algae and mold growth. What they use is a wide weave burlap, and they lay it on top of their soil blocks, and they find that that traps enough humidity to get germination going, but allows air circulation as well. And that is a super sustainable material, great material. I tried it though, and it did not work for me. I could not get good germination that way, and I found for me it exacerbated the mold and algae growth. But I would encourage you to try that. It's inexpensive, and it's really an easy thing to do, and some of the expert soil blockers out there have used it and loved it. So another one you can try. All right, now I'm going to show you my personal setup that I use in my basement. So for my setup, I have a lot of space. You don't need this much space for home gardening purposes, but I am a little bit obsessed with growing flowers. I also grow a lot of vegetables. I also am toying with the idea of starting a small business. Just a little teaser there. We'll see how the year goes. I want to talk to you just for a minute about grow lights. We could go down a rabbit hole on grow lights. There are so many different types. There's a lot of information out there, but I want to provide you with just a few pieces of information, because for success in soil blocking for the home gardener, you don't need fancy lights. You don't need to research all about lighting. What matters is just that your seeds get enough light. So there are generally two different types of lights that you can use to grow seedlings. There are fluorescent lights and there are LED lights. I prefer LED lights for a few reasons. They are more energy efficient. They do not emit heat, so you can get them really close to your seedlings without burning them, and it makes it easier to control the amount of heat your plants are getting. They last longer, and they are a little bit more expensive up front, but you save money in the long term because of their efficiency. But fluorescent lights work great too. I'm experimenting with a few different types of lights, but none of these were expensive. You can start off with shop lights. Here's a couple that I have, two different types. What I did was I bought shop lights that were in the 5,000 to 6,500 Kelvin range. I saw that recommendation, and Kelvins are color temperature. Color can be either more on the blue with a cool end or the red hot spectrum, and that is supposed to affect what type of growth your plant has. So more in the cool blue ranges is supposed to promote more foliage growth, better for seedlings. More in the red hot color range is supposed to be better for fruit and flower production. But some people recommend using full spectrum for seedlings. So I'm trying both, but I did find just the 5,000 watt shop lights worked great and gave me tons of success. And these lights were about $11 each on Amazon. They can range anywhere up from 20 to 30 as well. But look at how much a couple of lights gives you in terms of space. Let me show you. Here is one shelf with two $11 shop lights. And I can fit, imagine having 40 plants on one of these trays. I could fit tons of plants on this one shelf. So for the home gardener, you don't need to buy a ton of light or invest in a ton of money to, again, start your own soil blocks. My husband, as a gift, got me these full spectrum lights, so I'm gonna be trying them out this year and seeing how they do. Here's just a peek at my timer. Again, inexpensive, easy to program, easy to use. Well worth the investment. And here's a look at a heat mat. A 10 by 20 is a great size for a home gardener, not expensive. I think this one was about $20. And it can hold a lot of seeds. You do have to sort of plan out how many you want to start and when to make sure they all have room on the tray. But you can see this one, if I turn the tray sideways, which works fine, can hold 2 or 3 trays at a time. If you're crazy like me, you can buy a giant heat mat. Very unnecessary, but it works. And there are my onions, the first seeds I planted this year, getting up and going. And finally, here's my fan. You do not need a fan this big. I happen to have this because I have such tall shelves and I wanted a fan that would be able to reach all levels. You could use a small, inexpensive fan that you have on hand, a desk fan, a personal fan. All of those work well. So I know that seemed like a lot of supplies and a lot of information. I hope that this inspired you to just try it. It's such a rewarding experience, not only soil blocking, but starting plants from seed. And I'm gonna go over in my next video how I soil block, although I have some other videos that show you the process. And I'm also gonna show you the different types of soil you can use. But I hope this was helpful. I hope you had as much fun talking about starting seeds and using soil blocks as I did.